Marcus Thompson had always been the class clown. Even at 23, working as a street performer in London, he couldn't resist making people laugh. Specialty was mime work and silly pranks that brought smiles to tired commuters rushing through the busy streets. But on that crisp October morning, Marcus had no idea that his next joke would change everything. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the cobblestones. Near Buckingham Palace, as Marcus set up his usual spot, tourists gathered around cameras, ready, hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous guards in their red uniforms and tall black hats. Marcus watched the crowd's fascination with the stoic sentries and felt a familiar itch to entertain. "Those guards never move," whispered an elderly American tourist to her husband. "I wonder what it takes to make them react." Marcus overheard this and grinned. He performed near the palace many times, but always kept a respectful distance. From the guards, today felt different though. The crowd was larger than usual, filled with excited families and curious onlookers. The energy was infectious. Guard William Hayes stood perfectly still at his post, as he had done hundreds of times before. At 28, he had served in the Queen's Guard for 5 years. His discipline was legendary among his peers. Snow or blazing sun, nothing moved William from his position. His dark eyes stared straight ahead, seeing everything while appearing to see nothing. Marcus studied the guard's unwavering stance. He noticed how tourists would wave, make faces, and even dance in front of the guards, hoping for some reaction. The guards remained like statues, professional and unmoved. But Marcus had an idea brewing, something harmless but unexpected. He pulled out a small device from his performance kit. It was a harmless static electricity generator, the kind used in science museums to make people's hair stand up. Marcus had used it in his street shows to create funny moments with volunteers. The device was completely safe, producing only a tiny shock similar to rubbing socks on carpet. The crowd around Marcus grew as he began his usual routine. Children giggled as he pretended to be trapped in an invisible box. Adults smiled as he mimicked their movements. But his eyes kept drifting to the guards standing so perfectly still just 20 feet away. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus announced. In his theatrical voice, "Today, I will attempt something never seen before." The crowd perked up, phones and cameras pointing in his direction.
Act!
Marcus loved an audience, and this one was particularly eager. William heard the commotion but maintained his focus. Street performers were common around the palace, and he had learned to tune them out. His training had prepared him for all kinds of distractions: drunk tourists, crying babies, even protesters. Nothing could break his concentration. Marcus began moving closer to the guards, still entertaining the crowd with exaggerated movements. "Behold," he called out, "the ancient art of mime meets modern technology." He held up the small device, though most people couldn't see exactly what it was. The crowd pressed closer, sensing something exciting was about to happen. A young mother lifted her daughter onto her shoulders for a better view. Teenagers held up their phones, ready to record whatever was coming next. Even the usually reserved British tourists seemed caught up in the anticipation. Marcus approached the guard slowly, still performing his mime routine. He pretended to climb invisible stairs, getting higher and higher until he was right next to William. The crowd held its breath. Some whispered concerns about getting too close to the guard. But nobody wanted to miss what happened next. William sensed the performer's presence but remained motionless. His training kicked in automatically. Ignore distractions, maintain position, stay professional. He had dealt with countless situations like this before. In a few moments, the performer would give up and move away. But Marcus wasn't planning to give up. With theatrical flair, he raised the static generator toward the guard's ornate uniform. The crowd watched in fascination as Marcus began his countdown. 3.2.1. The tiny shock that followed was barely noticeable, just a small zap that would normally make someone giggle and shake their hand. But what happened next stunned everyone watching. William's eyes went wide. His carefully maintained composure cracked for just an instant. But instead of simply flinching, something extraordinary occurred. The shock seemed to trigger a chain reaction that nobody, especially Marcus, had expected. The guard's rifle slipped slightly from his grip. His perfectly polished boots shifted on the cobblestones. For a moment that felt like forever, William Hayes, the unshakable, unflappable Queen's Guard, looked genuinely surprised. But it wasn't the small shock that had caused this reaction. Unknown to Marcus and the crowd, William had been dealing with a hidden medical condition. The tiny electrical pulse had triggered something far more serious than anyone could have imagined. The crowd's laughter died in their throats as they realized something was wrong. William's face had gone pale, and his breathing became shallow. The static shock hadn't just surprised him, it had set off a dangerous heart rhythm that he had been quietly managing for months. Marcus dropped his device, his showman's grin fading to concern. This wasn't part of the act. The guard was clearly in distress, though still trying to maintain his position. William's years of training kept him upright even as his body began to betray him. "Is he okay?" Someone in the crowd called out. Others began to murmur with worry. What had started as a harmless prank was clearly becoming something much more serious. Marcus felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. He had only wanted to get a laugh, maybe see the famous guard crack a smile. He never intended to cause any harm. The small device in his hand suddenly felt like a weapon. William fought to stay conscious, his vision beginning to blur around the edges. His heart was racing irregularly, each beat feeling like it might be his last. But his duty remained clear. Protect the palace, maintain his post, show no weakness. The crowd was no longer watching a performance. They were witnessing what appeared to be a medical emergency unfolding before their eyes. And Marcus Thompson, the street performer who just wanted to make people laugh, found himself at the center of a situation that was spinning completely out of control. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus watched in horror as guard William Hayes swayed slightly on his feet, his face growing paler by the second. The crowd, which had been laughing and filming just moments before, now stood frozen in shocked concern. "Someone call for help," shouted an elderly man from the back of the crowd. But before anyone could reach for their phones, something unexpected happened. William, despite his obvious distress, began to speak in a voice that was barely above. A whisper, but somehow carried across the courtyard. "The device," William managed to say, his words careful and measured despite his condition. "It's not ... what you think." Marcus stepped closer, his heart pounding with guilt and confusion. "I'm so sorry, mate. It was just a harmless static generator." "I never meant to, no," William interrupted, his breathing still labored, but his eyes now focused intently on Marcus. "You don't understand? That shock ... it saved my life?" The crowd murmured in bewilderment. A woman near the front called out, "What do you mean? You look terrible." William's training as a guard had taught him to remain calm under pressure, and even now, facing what he knew was a serious medical situation, he maintained his discipline. "I've been having heart problems for months," he explained quietly. "Irregular rhythms. The doctors said I might need a procedure called cardioversion, basically controlled electric shocks to reset my heart rhythm."
Out?
"Are you saying that my little prank actually helped you?" "The timing was incredible," William continued, his color slowly returning to normal. "My heart had been in a dangerous rhythm all morning. I was actually considering calling in sick, but duty kept me here. That small shock you gave me, it worked like a natural defibrillator." A doctor who had been touring with a group of medical professionals pushed through the crowd. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen," she announced. "May I check your pulse?" William nodded, grateful for professional help. Dr. Chen placed her fingers on his wrist and counted silently. After a moment, she looked up with amazement. "Your heart rhythm is completely normal now. How long have you been experiencing arrhythmias?" 3 months, William replied. "Started right after a training exercise. I've been on medication, but it wasn't working well. I had an appointment next week for cardioversion treatment." The crowd began to understand what had happened. What looked like a medical emergency caused by Marcus's prank had actually been a life-saving intervention. The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, overwhelmed by the turn of events. "I can't believe this. I thought I had seriously hurt you. I was prepared to face charges, lose everything. Instead, you might have saved my career," William said, managing his first smile in months. If my condition had gotten worse, I would have been forced to leave the guard. The treatment I needed was expensive, and there was no guarantee it would work. Dr. Chen continued her examination. This is remarkable. The electrical pulse was exactly the right strength and timing to reset your heart's natural rhythm. It's like winning the medical lottery. An American tourist who had been recording the entire incident stepped forward. I got everything on video. This is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. The crowd that had gathered for entertainment was now witnessing something far more profound. Word began to spread quickly through the palace grounds. Other guards, while maintaining their posts, glanced over with curiosity. Palace security approached to assess the situation. "Is there a problem here?" asked Sergeant Major Davies, the senior guard on duty. William straightened as much as he could, still feeling weak but determined to explain. "No problem, sir. Actually, quite the opposite." He recounted the events with Marcus and Dr. Chen filling in details. Sergeant Major Davies listened with growing amazement. In his 20 years of service, he had seen many unusual incidents around the palace, but nothing quite like this. "You're telling me that this street performer accidentally cured your heart condition?" "It appears so, sir," William replied. "I should report that I've been dealing with medical issues that I perhaps should have disclosed earlier." The sergeant major's expression softened. "William, every guard here knows about your dedication. If you've been dealing with health problems while maintaining your duties, that speaks to your character, not against it." Marcus felt a surge of relief mixed with continuing disbelief. "I still can't believe this happened." "I mean, what are the odds?" Dr. Chen spoke up. "Actually, it's not as impossible as it seems. Low-voltage electrical stimulation has been used in cardiac treatment for decades. The key is timing and placement. Your device delivered just enough current at exactly the right moment." A young girl in the crowd tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, is the funny man a superhero now?" The question brought laughter from everyone present, breaking the tension that had built up over the past few minutes. Marcus looked down at the little girl and smiled. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm just a street performer who got very, very lucky." "Hey, we all got lucky," William added, "including everyone who might have been affected if my condition had worsened while I was on duty." The palace security team had been monitoring the situation and approached with medical personnel. The palace doctor, Dr. Richards, arrived with a portable EKG machine. "Let's get a proper reading on your heart rhythm," he said to William. As the medical team worked, Marcus found himself surrounded by curious tourists, asking questions about his device and his intentions. He answered honestly, explaining that it was just a simple static generator meant for entertainment purposes. "I've used this thing hundreds of times in my shows," Marcus explained. "Kids love it. Makes their hair stand up. Gives them a tiny shock that makes them giggle. I never imagined it could do something like this." The EKG results confirmed what Dr. Chen had observed. William's heart rhythm was completely normal and stable. Dr. Richards looked puzzled as he compared the reading to William's medical file. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Richards said. "Your previous EKGs showed significant irregularities. This reading shows a perfectly healthy heart rhythm." William felt stronger with each passing minute. The irregular heartbeats that had been plaguing him for months were gone. The fatigue and shortness of breath that had become his constant companions had lifted. "I feel better than I have in months," William admitted. "It's like someone flipped a switch and everything started working properly again." The crowd, which had initially been focused on entertainment, now found themselves part of an incredible story. People who had been strangers minutes before were now connected by this shared experience of witnessing something truly remarkable. As word spread through social media, the video footage began attracting attention from around the world. What had started as a simple prank was becoming a story of unexpected healing, human connection, and the mysterious ways that life can surprise us all. News of the incident spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within hours, the video of Marcus shocking the guard had been shared thousands of times across social media platforms. But as the full story emerged, the narrative changed from prankster attacks royal guard to street performer accidentally saves guard's life. Marcus found himself thrust into a spotlight he had never expected. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from news outlets, talk shows, and curious strangers who had somehow gotten his number. He sat in his small London flat, staring at the static generator that had changed everything. "This is mental," he said to his roommate Jake, who was scrolling through the endless stream of news articles about the incident. "Yesterday, I was just a street performer trying to make a few pounds. Now they're calling me the Miracle Mime." Jake looked up from his laptop. "Mate, you've got interview requests from BBC, ITV, even some American networks. There's a producer from a medical documentary series who wants to film a segment about you." Meanwhile, at the Palace Medical Facility, William was undergoing extensive testing to confirm his miraculous recovery. Dr. Richards worked alongside a team of cardiac specialists, all amazed by the sudden normalization of William's heart rhythm. 30 years of cardiology, I've never seen anything quite like this, said Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the consulting cardiologist. Your heart appears to have reset itself to a completely normal rhythm. The electrical activity is textbook perfect. William lay on the examination table, feeling better than he had in months. So I don't need the cardioversion procedure anymore? Based on these results? No, Dr. Warren replied. We'll want to monitor you closely for the next few weeks, but your heart is functioning normally. That street performer may have saved you from months of medical procedures and uncertainty. The story reached the attention of palace officials, who were initially concerned about security protocols. How had a civilian been allowed so close to a guard with an electrical device? But as the details emerged, their concern turned to fascination. Sir James Morrison, the palace's head of security, reviewed the incident reports with his team. So let me understand this correctly, he said. A street performer accidentally provided medical treatment to one of our guards using a toy from a magic shop. That's essentially correct, sir, replied his deputy. The device was completely harmless, the kind sold in novelty stores. The guard's medical condition made the timing incredibly fortunate. And the performer had no idea about the guard's heart problem, none whatsoever. He was simply trying to get a reaction for his audience. Sir James shook his head in amazement. File this under things I never thought I'd have to deal with in this job. Back at the palace gates, William had returned to light duty while his condition was monitored. Word of his experience had spread among the guards, and he found himself the center of attention for the first time in his career. So this street performer just walked up and zapped you? Asked his colleague, Guard Roberts. It sounds ridiculous when you put it like that, William replied, but yes. And somehow it fixed a problem that doctors have been trying to solve for months. The tourists visiting the palace had changed too. Instead of just trying to make the guards laugh or react, many now approached with genuine curiosity about William's story. Some even brought small gifts, cards wishing him well, flowers, and offers to pray for his continued health. Marcus, meanwhile, was struggling with his newfound fame. He had always enjoyed making people laugh, but this attention was different. Reporters wanted to know everything about his life, his motivations, even his family history. I'm not a hero, he told a BBC reporter during his first television interview. I was just doing what I always do, trying to entertain people. The fact that it helped William was pure accident. The interviewer leaned forward. Surely you must feel some sense of pride in what happened. Marcus considered the question carefully. I feel grateful. Grateful that no harm was done. Grateful that William is okay, and grateful that sometimes life surprises us in the most amazing ways. The medical community was equally intrigued by the incident. Dr. Chen, who had been present during the event, found herself fielding calls from colleagues around the world who wanted to understand the mechanics of what had occurred. It's a perfect example of how low-voltage electrical stimulation can affect cardiac rhythm, she explained to a gathering of cardiologists. The timing had to be absolutely perfect if William's heart had been in a different phase of its irregular rhythm. The shock could have made things worse instead of better. So it was essentially luck? Asked one of her colleagues. Incredible luck, Dr. Chen confirmed. The right person, with the right device, at exactly the right moment.
Oh.
It's the kind of coincidence that makes you believe in miracles. The story caught the attention of medical researchers who specialized in cardiac arrhythmias. Several universities reached out to both Marcus and William, hoping to study the incident further and potentially develop new treatment protocols based on what had happened. Dr. Michael Foster, from Imperial College London, was particularly interested. This case could change how we think about emergency cardiac intervention, he told his research team. If we could understand exactly what made this work, we might be able to develop portable devices for first responders. William was initially hesitant about participating in medical studies. I just want to get back to normal duty, he told Dr. Richards. All this attention feels strange for someone whose job is to stand quietly and not draw notice to himself. I understand your reluctance, Dr. Richards replied, but your experience could help other people with similar conditions. You might be able to contribute to treatments that could save lives. The public's reaction to the story was overwhelmingly positive. Social media was filled with messages calling Marcus a hero and William an inspiration for his dedication to duty despite his health challenges. But there were also critics who questioned the security implications of the incident. How are we supposed to trust that our most important buildings are properly protected if street performers can walk up and shock the guards with electronic devices? Wrote one angry blogger. Palace Security addressed these concerns in a carefully worded statement. The device in question posed no security threat. It was no different from the static electricity generated by walking across carpet. Our security protocols remain robust and effective. Marcus found the criticism difficult to handle. I never meant to cause any security concerns, he told Jake. I was just trying to do my job as an entertainer. Don't let them get to you. Jake replied, most people understand that what happened was a miracle, not a security breach. As the days passed, both Marcus and William began to receive invitations to speak at medical conferences, charity events, and educational institutions. The story of their accidental encounter had captured imaginations around the world, becoming a symbol of how unexpected connections between strangers could lead to extraordinary outcomes. The static generator that had started it all sat on Marcus's kitchen table, looking remarkably ordinary for something that had changed to lives so dramatically. He picked it up and turned it over in his hands, marveling at how such a simple device had set in motion events that neither he nor William could have ever predicted. 3 weeks after the incident, Marcus received an unexpected phone call that would change everything once again. The caller identified himself as Lord Chamberlain Sir Edward Phillips, one of the most senior officials in the royal household. Thompson, came the distinguished voice through the phone. I believe you know why I'm calling. Marcus's heart began racing. He had been dreading this moment, assuming it would bring formal charges, or at least a stern warning about approaching. Royal Guards. Sir, I want to apologize again for what happened. I never intended, Mr. Thompson, Sir Edward interrupted gently. You misunderstand the purpose of my call. Her Majesty has been following your story with great interest. The words hit Marcus. Like a thunderbolt, Her Majesty? You mean ... the Queen, yes? She would like to meet both you and Guard Hayes. Would you be available for a private audience next Tuesday afternoon? Marcus nearly dropped the phone. In his wildest dreams, he had never imagined that his street performance career would lead to meeting royalty. Yes, sir, of course, sir. But may I ask why? Sir Edward's voice carried a hint of warmth. Her Majesty believes that extraordinary acts of kindness, even accidental ones, should be recognized. She has a particular interest in stories that demonstrate the unexpected connections between her subjects. Meanwhile, William was receiving his own surprising news from his commanding officer, Colonel Harrison. William, you've been selected for a commendation, the colonel announced during their private meeting. It's not for the incident itself, but for your dedication to duty while managing a serious medical condition without compromising your responsibilities. William stood at attention, still processing the news. Sir, I'm not sure I deserve any recognition. I should have reported my condition earlier. That's exactly why you deserve recognition, Colonel Harrison replied. You put duty before personal comfort, and when the situation arose, you handled it with professionalism and dignity. The Queen herself has requested to meet you. The news of the royal audience sent shockwaves through both men's lives. Marcus found himself shopping for a proper suit for the first time in years. While William polished his dress uniform until it gleamed, Dr. Richards continued monitoring William's condition, amazed by his continued perfect health. Your heart rhythm has remained completely stable, he reported during William's weekly checkup. It's as if the arrhythmia never existed. The medical community's interest in the case had grown exponentially. Research papers were being written, and medical schools were using the incident as a case study in unusual cardiac interventions. Dr. Foster from Imperial College had assembled a team to study the exact conditions that made Marcus's accidental treatment so effective. We've recreated the scenario in our lab, he explained to his colleagues. The key factors were the precise voltage, the duration of contact, and most importantly, the exact timing within William's cardiac cycle. On the morning of the royal audience, Marcus stood before his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 100th time. His reflection showed a man transformed by circumstances beyond his control, no longer just a street performer, but someone who had accidentally become part of medical history. Jake helped him with his cufflinks. You realize this is completely mad, right? 3 weeks ago you were doing mime acts for tourists, and now you're meeting the Queen. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up, Marcus replied. This can't be real. At the palace, William was going through his own preparations. His fellow guards had helped him prepare for protocol, but nothing could calm his nerves about meeting the monarch he had sworn to protect. Just remember, advised Sergeant Major Davies, she's met thousands of people. She put you at ease. The audience was scheduled for 3 p.m. in the Blue Drawing Room, a relatively intimate space by palace standards. Both Marcus and William arrived early and found themselves waiting together in an antechamber. How are you feeling? Marcus asked William, noting that they were both nervous for the first time since their initial encounter. William admitted, same. It's funny. I perform in front of crowds all the time, but this is different. They talked quietly about how their lives had changed over the past few weeks. William's health remained perfect, and he had been cleared for full duty. Marcus had been flooded with offers for television appearances, book deals, and even a movie option. I never wanted to be famous, Marcus confided. I just wanted to make people laugh. I just wanted to serve quietly, William replied. Neither of us got what we expected. At precisely 3 p.m., the doors opened and Sir Edward appeared. Gentlemen, Her Majesty will see you now. They entered the elegantly appointed room to find Queen Elizabeth II standing near a window overlooking the palace gardens. She turned as they entered, and both men bowed as they had been instructed. Mr. Thompson, Guard Hayes, please be seated, she said, gesturing to chairs arranged in a small circle. Her voice was warm and surprisingly informal. Marcus was struck by how normal she seemed, despite the extraordinary circumstances of their meeting. The Queen had clearly been briefed on every detail of their story. I understand you've both had quite an adventure, she began with a slight smile. Mr. Thompson, I'm told you had no idea your performance would have such remarkable consequences. No, Your Majesty, Marcus replied, his voice steadier than he expected. I was just trying to entertain the tourists. I never imagined anything like this could happen. The Queen turned to William and Guard Hayes. I understand your dedication to duty continued even while you were dealing with significant health challenges. Yes, Your Majesty. Though I realize now, I should have reported my condition sooner. Nonsense, the Queen replied firmly. You maintained your responsibilities while seeking appropriate medical care. That shows both dedication and judgment. She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more personal. What fascinates me about your story is how it demonstrates the unexpected ways we can help each other. Mr. Thompson, you set out to bring joy to strangers. Guard Hayes, you stood your post despite personal difficulties. Neither of you sought recognition, yet both showed the best of human nature. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, covering everything from Marcus's background and street performance to William's military service. The Queen showed genuine interest in their experiences and asked thoughtful questions about how the incident had affected their lives. As the audience drew to a close, the Queen made an announcement that surprised both men. I would like to establish a small fund for research into cardiac arrhythmias inspired by your experience, she told them. Mr. Thompson, would you be willing to serve as an ambassador for this cause? In Guard Hayes. Would you consider sharing your experience to help other service members who might be dealing with similar health challenges? Both men agreed immediately, honored to contribute to something meaningful that had grown from their chance encounter. As they prepared to leave, the Queen offered one final observation. Sometimes the most important moments in our lives come from the most unexpected places. Your story reminds us all to remain open to the possibilities that surround us every day. Walking out of the palace together, Marcus and William felt the weight of their new responsibilities, but also the satisfaction of knowing their accidental meeting had led to something far greater than either could have imagined. 6 months after their meeting with the Queen, both Marcus and William found their lives transformed in ways they never could have predicted. The Cardiac Research Fund had raised over £2 million, and their story had inspired similar programs. In hospitals across the United Kingdom and beyond, Marcus stood backstage at the Royal Albert Hall, preparing for what had become his signature performance. A combination of traditional mime work with educational segments about heart health awareness. The venue was sold out, with proceeds going to the Queen's Cardiac Research Initiative. 5 minutes. Marcus called the stage manager. Through the curtains, he could hear the excited chatter of 3,000 people who had come to see the man they still called the Miracle Mime. In the audience sat William, now promoted to corporal and serving as a spokesman for military health awareness. Beside him was Dr. Chen, who had become the lead researcher on the Cardiac Fund's first major study. The research team had made breakthrough discoveries about precise electrical timing and heart rhythm correction directly inspired by Marcus's accidental intervention. Are you nervous for him? Dr. Chen asked William as they watched the stage. Lights dim. He's a natural performer, William replied. But this is different from street performance. Tonight, he's not just entertaining, he's educating people about something that could save their lives. The past months had brought both men into contact with hundreds of people dealing with cardiac issues. They had visited hospitals, spoken at medical conferences, and met with families affected by heart disease. Each encounter had deepened their understanding of how significant their chance meeting had become. Marcus took the stage to thunderous applause. His performance had evolved, far beyond simple mime work. He now incorporated storytelling, interactive demonstrations with safe electrical devices, and testimonials from people whose lives had been changed by the research their story had inspired. 6 months ago, Marcus began, his voice carrying clearly. Through the packed auditorium, I was just a street performer with a silly little device trying to make tourists laugh. I had no idea that one small action could lead to all of this. He gestured to a large screen that showed images of the research laboratories funded by their initiative, the medical devices being developed based on William's case, and the dozens of patients who had benefited from improved treatment protocols. But here's what I've learned, Marcus continued. We all have the power to change someone's life, usually in ways we never expect. It might be a smile to a stranger, a helping hand to a neighbor, or in my case, a harmless prank that accidentally saved someone's career and health. The audience listened intently as Marcus demonstrated various electrical devices, explaining how they worked and why timing was so crucial in cardiac treatment. His natural ability to entertain made complex medical concepts accessible to everyone present. Meanwhile, backstage, William was preparing for his own segment of the program. His role had evolved from simply sharing his medical experience to advocating for better health support systems in the military and emergency services. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus announced, please welcome someone who has become not just a friend, but a partner in our mission to help others, Corporal William Hayes. The applause was warm and sustained as William joined Marcus on stage. His military bearing remained evident, but months of public speaking had given him a confidence he had never possessed during his silent guard duties. When Marcus shocked me that day, William began drawing laughter from the audience. I thought my career was over. I had been hiding a medical condition that was getting worse every day. I was afraid that reporting it would mean losing the job I loved. He paused, looking out at the sea of faces. What I learned is that hiding health problems doesn't protect anyone. It puts you at risk. It puts your colleagues at risk, and it prevents you from getting the help you need. William went on to share statistics about unreported health issues in high-stress professions and announced new programs that would provide confidential medical support for service members dealing with similar challenges. The evening's highlight came when they brought Dr. Foster on stage to demonstrate the new portable cardiac monitoring device that had been developed based on their experience. The device could detect dangerous heart rhythms and provide immediate, precisely timed electrical intervention. This device exists because of what happened between Marcus and William, Dr. Foster explained. Their story taught us that the right intervention at the right moment can be life-changing. Now we can provide that intervention deliberately, safely, and effectively. The audience watched as volunteers from local emergency services learned to use the new devices. Several paramedics who had attended the event commented that they had never seen medical equipment explained so clearly and entertaining. Anyankly met with audience members in the lobby. They were approached by a young woman holding the hand of an elderly man. "This is my grandfather," she said, tears in her eyes. "He had a heart attack 3 months ago. The paramedics who saved him were using one of the new devices developed from your research. The doctors said it made all the difference." Moments like these had become common in their new lives. Letters arrived daily from people whose medical treatment had been improved by the research their story had inspired. Cardiac units in hospitals reported better success rates with rhythm corrections. And emergency responders had new tools that were saving lives. But perhaps the most meaningful development had been their friendship. Two men who would never have met under normal circumstances had become close friends and partners. In a mission neither had sought, but both had embraced. As the evening wound down, they sat in Marcus's dressing room, reflecting on how far they had come. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had chosen a different spot that day?" Marcus asked. "Or if you had called in sick like you were thinking about doing?" William considered the question. "Try not to think about it too much. The randomness of it all is overwhelming if you really consider it. Exact timing, the precise circumstances, even the crowd being there to witness it, if any one thing had been different. 2 years later, Marcus stood in a small medical clinic in rural Kenya, watching as Dr. James Kimani demonstrated the latest portable cardiac device to a group of local healthcare workers. The device, now in its 3rd generation of development, bore little resemblance to the simple static generator that had started everything. The beauty of this system, Dr. Kimani explained in both English and Swahili, is that it can be operated by anyone with basic medical training. The device analyzes the heart rhythm automatically and delivers precisely the right treatment at exactly the right moment. Marcus translated for William, who was adjusting the solar panel that powered the clinic's medical equipment. Their global tours had taken them to 43 countries over the past 18 months, and they had learned to work together seamlessly despite their very different backgrounds. The Kenyan clinic was their 200th installation. It's part of the Global Cardiac initiative that had grown far beyond anything they had originally envisioned. Each clinic was equipped with devices based on the research inspired by their chance encounter, and each was staffed by medical professionals trained in the protocols they had helped develop. "How many lives do you think we've touched?" William asked Marcus as they watched the training session. Marcus did the mental calculation he performed regularly. Direct medical interventions, probably around 15,000. But if you count the people trained, the families educated, the research inspired. He shrugged. It's impossible to calculate. Their work had evolved far beyond simple medical equipment distribution. They had become advocates for accessible healthcare. Storytellers who could translate complex medical concepts into human terms, and symbols of how ordinary people could create extraordinary change. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had become the scientific director of their initiative, joined them outside the clinic. She had spent the past month in Kenya, working with local medical schools to establish permanent cardiac care training programs. "The university in Nairobi wants to establish a research fellowship named after you too," she told them. "They're calling it the Thompson-Hayes Fellowship for Serendipitous Medical Discovery." Marcus groaned. "That name makes us sound like we planned this whole thing." "Maybe that's the point," William replied. Maybe the best discoveries come from people who aren't trying to make discoveries. Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion inside the clinic. A young woman had arrived carrying a small child who appeared to be in distress. Dr. Kamani quickly assessed the situation and began setting up one of the new cardiac devices. Arrhythmia, he announced. Probably congenital. The child's heart rhythm is very irregular. Marcus and William watched from the doorway as Dr. Kamani worked with calm efficiency. The device analyzed the child's condition, calculated the precise electrical intervention needed, and delivered treatment that was perfectly timed to the child's cardiac cycle. Within minutes, the child's color improved and his breathing became normal. The young mother, who had been crying with fear, began smiling through her tears as her son opened his eyes and looked around curiously. 2 years ago, this child would have died, Dr. Kamani said quietly. The nearest cardiac facility is 8 hours away by car, and most families here don't have cars. This device gave us the ability to provide advanced cardiac care in a rural clinic. Moments like these had become common during their travels, but they never lost their impact. Each life saved, each family kept together, each person given a second chance at health, all connected back to that random moment when a street performer had tried to make a royal guard smile. That evening, as they sat around a campfire outside the village where they were staying, Marcus and William reflected on their journey. They had been invited to speak at medical conferences, had met with heads of state, and had seen their story adapted into documentaries, books, and even a children's educational program. "Do you ever miss your old life?" William asked Marcus. The simplicity of just performing on street corners. Marcus poked at the fire with a stick, considering the question. Sometimes, there's something pure about just trying to make people laugh for a few minutes. No agenda, no greater purpose, just simple entertainment. "But," William prompted, "but I can't imagine going back, not after seeing what we've been able to accomplish. That child today, he's going to grow up healthy because of research that started with my silly little shock device." William nodded. "I feel the same way about guard duty. Standing at attention for hours was peaceful in its own way. But this work feels more important somehow." Their satellite phone rang, interrupting their quiet conversation. Dr. Chen answered and spoke in hushed tones for several minutes before hanging up. "That was the Nobel Committee," she announced, her voice barely containing her excitement. Marcus and William looked at each other with expressions of disbelief. "The research consortium that grew out of your story has been awarded the Nobel Prize in physiology or medicine," Dr. Chen continued. "The committee specifically cited the innovative approach to cardiac intervention that resulted from your accidental collaboration." The news hit them like a thunderbolt.
Oh.
The Nobel Prize, the highest recognition and scientific achievement for work that had begun with a prank gone wrong. "They want both of you to attend the ceremony in Stockholm," Dr. Chen added. "Not as recipients, but as the inspiration for the research that made the breakthrough possible." Marcus stood up and walked a few steps away from the fire, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was hearing. William remained seated, staring into the flames with an expression of complete amazement. "This is insane," Marcus finally said. "How do you go from being a street mime to attending the Nobel Prize ceremony?" "The same way you go from accidentally shocking a guard to saving thousands of lives," William replied. "One unexpected step at a time, over the next few weeks, as they completed their work in Kenya and prepared to return to London." Both men grappled with the surreal nature of their journey. The media attention surrounding the Nobel announcement had been intense, but they had learned to handle publicity with grace and humor. The ceremony in Stockholm was unlike anything either had experienced. They sat in the audience as researchers, who had built upon their story, received the world's most prestigious scientific award. The acceptance speech specifically mentioned their contribution to medical science through the serendipitous discovery that sometimes the most important breakthroughs come from the most unexpected sources. After the ceremony, they were approached by countless scientists, medical professionals, and students who wanted to hear their story firsthand. But the conversation that meant the most came from a young girl, probably 8 years old, who had attended with her parents. "Are you the funny man who helped fix hearts?" she asked Marcus with the directness that only children possess. "I suppose." "I am," Marcus replied, kneeling down to her level. My daddy says you weren't trying to help, but you helped anyway. That's right. Sometimes the best things happen when we're not trying to make them happen. The little girl considered this seriously. So if I'm nice to people even when I don't have to be, maybe something good will happen. Marcus smiled. I think that's exactly right. As they flew back to London after the Nobel ceremony, Marcus and William sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights of European cities pass below them. Their adventure had taken them around the world, brought them fame they never sought, and given them purpose they never expected. What do you think comes next? William asked as they began their descent toward Heathrow. Marcus pulled the original static generator from his carry-on bag. He had carried it to every country they had visited. A tangible reminder of where their journey began. I have absolutely no idea, he said with a grin. But based on our track record, it's going to be something we never saw coming. 2 years after a simple prank had accidentally saved a life, Marcus Thompson and William Hayes had become unlikely ambassadors for the power of human connection. The importance of accessible healthcare and the miraculous potential hidden in everyday moments, their story had proven that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply show up. Be yourself and remain open to the extraordinary possibilities that surround us all. The street performer and the royal guard had learned that miracles don't require planning, they just require the courage to act with kindness. Even when you don't know what the consequences might be, and somewhere in London tourists still gathered around Buckingham Palace, hoping to see the famous guards react to their antics. Never knowing that the most incredible reaction in the palace's history had started with nothing more than a desire to make people smile.